Monica, once just a young maid working tirelessly in billionaire Nathaniel's grand estate, never imagined how her life would spiral after their brief romance. When she found out she was pregnant, her dreams of love and stability crumbled as Nathaniel cast her aside without a second thought. But years later, their paths cross again, and what happens next leaves him speechless. Monica's transformation leaves Nathaniel questioning his choices, haunted by regret. How did she rise from the betrayal, and why does her strength unsettle him so deeply? Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and support the channel so you never miss an episode like this one. In the quiet town of Greenfield, Louisiana, Monica's life began with mystery. As an infant, she was left on the steps of St. Mary's orphanage with nothing but a thin blanket. The nuns, touched by her tiny, curious gaze, named her Monica and took her in. While they provided her with food and shelter, Monica felt a deep loneliness that no amount of care could soothe. From her room under the sloped roof, she'd often watch the other children laughing together, always feeling like a spectator. At night, she would sit by her window, gazing at the distant glow of homes, and whisper her wishes to the stars. She dreamed of being part of a family who would love her as their own, a place to call home. Each time a car pulled up at the orphanage, Monica's heart would race. But time after time, her hope was dashed as couples left with other children, leaving her behind. Though the nuns offered kind words, Monica's heart felt the ache of each rejection. Yet, in the face of growing doubts, she held on. Every night, she renewed her whispered promise that no matter how long it took, she would keep hoping for a family that would make her feel truly loved. Finally, when Monica was 13, her life took a turn. A couple, Terrence and Julia, who had tried for years to have a child, came to the orphanage. They were drawn to Monica, who shyly stood off to the side. After meeting her, they decided to adopt her, bringing joy to Monica's life for the first time. The initial days were blissful. Terrence and Julia showered her with warmth, making her feel like she belonged. Monica thought she had finally found her family, a safe place to call home. But soon, her world would shift again. Not long after her adoption, Julia became pregnant. When the baby boy arrived, Monica's dream of a family seemed to shatter. The attention and love she once received were now showered on her new brother. The hugs became fewer, the bedtime stories stopped, and her parents' laughter was now reserved for him. Monica tried to stay positive, helping with chores and watching over her little brother. But Terrence and Julia began treating her less like a daughter and more like an unpaid helper. School became a distant memory as her days were filled with cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the baby. The warmth that had filled her life slowly faded, replaced by orders and criticisms. She longed to be loved again, but all she felt was emptiness. At 17, Monica could no longer ignore the painful truth. She was invisible to the only family she had ever known. Terrence and Julia, who had once welcomed her with open arms, now saw her as little more than a shadow moving through their home, a pair of hands to scrub floors, cook meals, and care for her younger brother. The warmth that once filled their house had turned cold, and Monica knew it was time to leave. One night, with her heart pounding in her chest, she gathered the few belongings she treasured: an old notebook, a faded scarf from the orphanage, and a small bit of savings she had scraped together over the years. Slipping quietly out the back door, she looked back one last time at the darkened windows, bidding a silent farewell to the life she was leaving behind. The stars were bright overhead as she set out, her footsteps echoing down the empty streets. With each step, her fear mingled with a strange sense of freedom. She was leaving behind the heartache and rejection, stepping into the unknown with nothing but her will to survive. After hours of walking, the lights of Baton Rouge shimmered in the distance like a beacon. Monica's legs ached and her throat was dry, but the thought of a fresh start kept her moving. She had heard stories about the city, a place of music and bustling streets, a place where she could lose herself and build a new life. But when she arrived, the reality of being alone in an unfamiliar place sank in. Monica wandered through the crowded streets, her stomach growling and her feet sore. She knocked on door after door, asking if anyone needed help with cleaning or chores, but was met with shaking heads and closed doors. She slept on a park bench that first night, shivering as the early morning chill seeped into her bones. The days blurred together as Monica searched for work. Her few dollars dwindled quickly, and desperation gnawed at her. Each rejection left her feeling smaller, the weight of survival pressing down harder with every passing hour. Just as her hope began to fade, she found herself in front of a small, cozy restaurant on a quiet street. The smell of warm bread and spices drifted out, filling the air with a comforting scent that reminded her of simpler times. The door creaked open, and a woman with a welcoming smile stepped out. Her name was Aunt Delilah, and her presence radiated warmth. She noticed the exhaustion etched into Monica's face, the weariness in her eyes. "You look like you could use a hot meal," Aunt Delilah said, holding the door open. Monica, surprised by the kindness, accepted the offer with a grateful nod. Inside, the restaurant was small but full of life, with tables set neatly and photos of family members lining the walls. Aunt Delilah served her a steaming bowl of gumbo, and as Monica ate, she felt her spirits lift for the first time in days. Aunt Delilah listened as Monica shared her story, never interrupting, only nodding with understanding. "I could use an extra set of hands around here," Aunt Delilah said after a while. "It's not much, but I can offer you some work and a place to stay." Monica's heart swelled with gratitude. She had knocked on countless doors, endured days without food or shelter, but finally, someone had opened a door for her. Aunt Delilah's kindness felt like the first spark of hope she'd felt in years. As she helped clean tables and sweep floors, Monica realized she had found a place where she was seen, where she could work without fear or resentment. She had finally found her first step toward a new life. Monica's life took a hopeful turn when Aunt Delilah introduced her to Nathaniel, a reclusive billionaire known for his sprawling estate on the outskirts of Baton Rouge. The position was daunting, managing such a large property alone, but Monica embraced the challenge. For the first time in years, she felt secure, with steady work, a warm bed, and meals she didn't have to scrape together. She worked tirelessly, rising before dawn to polish the wood-paneled halls, scrub marble floors, and tend to the endless gardens that stretched across the property. Nathaniel was a quiet man, often absorbed in work and rarely at home. But when he did see Monica, he couldn't help but notice her diligence. She moved through the estate with quiet determination, her presence transforming the once cold mansion into a welcoming space. Her resilience intrigued him, breaking through the icy walls he had carefully built around himself. Over time, Nathaniel found himself lingering, looking forward to their brief exchanges, whether it was a simple good morning as he left for work or her soft laughter echoing down the hall as she cleaned. She too began to see beyond his cold exterior, recognizing a loneliness that mirrored her own. Their conversations grew longer, venturing into deeper, more personal territory. Slowly, a friendship blossomed, built on mutual respect and the unspoken understanding of two people who had known their share of isolation. One evening, after a particularly long day, they found themselves sharing a rare moment in the quiet of the study. Nathaniel poured them both a drink, and they talked well into the night, their laughter filling the empty room. Somewhere in that conversation, a spark flickered to life. It was something neither of them had expected or planned, but it felt real, natural, and comforting. That night, one thing led to another, and in their vulnerability, they found solace in each other's arms. In the weeks that followed, Monica discovered she was pregnant. She felt an overwhelming mix of emotions, joy, fear, and the hope that she could finally have the family she had always longed for. And as she looked at Nathaniel with growing affection, she dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she truly belonged. When Monica discovered she was pregnant, her world felt like it was bursting with color. She spent long moments alone, her hands resting on her stomach, marveling at the thought of the life growing inside her. She envisioned a future where she and Nathaniel, the man who had brought warmth and excitement back into her life, would raise their child together. She imagined their evenings as a family, Nathaniel's laughter mingling with the coos of their child. Finally, she felt that she had found a home, a future filled with love. Her heart raced as she prepared to tell him the news, her excitement bubbling over. She waited for him in the grand living room of his mansion, surrounded by polished floors and high ceilings that seemed to whisper the promise of a bright future. She envisioned the joy on his face, the tender embrace he would pull her into when he heard he was going to be a father. But when Nathaniel entered the room and she shared her news, his reaction shattered her dream in an instant. His face hardened, his mouth pressing into a thin line as he absorbed her words. Instead of joy, there was a flicker of something dark, panic, maybe even disgust. He turned away, pacing the room with his hand clenching and unclenching. "A child," he murmured, as if the word itself was something to be avoided. "Do you realize what this means, Monica?" Monica's heart sank, her excitement evaporating into a dull ache. She had expected shock, perhaps even fear, but not this. "I thought you'd be happy," she whispered, trying to reach out and take his hand. But he pulled away, shaking his head as if her touch would taint him. "Happy," he echoed, his voice sharp and distant. "Monica, do you understand what this would do to my reputation? A wealthy businessman with a maid carrying his child. Do you know what people would say?" Each word felt like a blow, tearing through the dreams she had so carefully built. "But it's our baby," she stammered, her voice trembling. Aren't we family?" Nathaniel's gaze turned cold, devoid of the warmth she had once cherished. "This is your problem now," he replied, his voice icy. "I can't be involved in this. I have too much to lose." Monica felt as though the ground beneath her had disappeared. She stood there, paralyzed, as he turned his back on her, making it painfully clear that she no longer had a place in his life. In the hours that followed, Monica felt as though she were moving through a nightmare. She returned to her small room in the servants' quarters, her mind numb with disbelief. Every corner of the mansion seemed to mock her, reminding her of the love she thought she'd found, now revealed as an illusion. She packed her belongings slowly, each item reminding her of the hope she'd carried just hours before. By the time the sun rose, Monica had slipped out of Nathaniel's home, her heart shattered, carrying only the bare essentials. She didn't look back. Baton Rouge, once filled with dreams, had become a place of heartbreak. As she walked to the bus station, her hands resting protectively over her stomach, she whispered promises to the child she carried. "I'll take care of you. We don't need him. We'll start fresh, somewhere far from here." The bus ride to New Orleans was long, each mile stretching out in silence. Monica pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the Louisiana landscape roll by, lost in her thoughts. She was no longer the naive girl who had come to Baton Rouge with nothing but hope. She was now a woman carrying a new life, and with it, a new resolve. By the time the bus pulled into New Orleans, Monica was ready to begin again, determined to rebuild her life for herself and her child. The betrayal still weighed heavily on her heart, but a new spark had ignited within her, a fierce determination to make a life for herself and her unborn baby, no matter the cost. In the city's bustling streets, Monica found herself both scared and strangely exhilarated. She was alone, yet she felt a growing strength. She would carve out a new life, one where her happiness wouldn't depend on anyone else. The vibrant energy of New Orleans surrounded her, giving her hope that despite the heartbreak, she could find a way forward. And as she stepped into the city with nothing but her small suitcase and the child growing within her, Monica silently vowed that she would never let her heart be so easily broken again. In New Orleans, Monica gave birth to a beautiful boy she named Daniel. She poured all her love into him, determined to give him the life she never had. She worked multiple jobs to support them, sacrificing sleep and comfort to ensure he had food and clothes. Daniel grew up seeing his mother's sacrifices, and he admired her strength. Monica's determination became the foundation of their small family. She always reminded him, "We may not have much, but we have each other." As Daniel grew older, her love and resilience inspired him to strive for excellence. Daniel excelled in school, eventually earning a scholarship to Louisiana State University. Monica's pride was boundless as she helped him pack for college. Her little boy was going to make something of himself, and she knew all her sacrifices had been worth it. At college, Daniel met Benjamin, a successful businessman who saw potential in him. Benjamin became Daniel's mentor, teaching him about business and life. Daniel admired Benjamin deeply, and over time, he introduced him to Monica. They formed a close bond, with Benjamin even visiting them during holidays. As Monica and her son Daniel settled into their lives in New Orleans, a new friendship began to blossom between Monica and Benjamin, Daniel's mentor and now close friend of the family. Benjamin was a seasoned businessman, wise and grounded, with a gentleness that set him apart. He admired Monica's strength and quiet resilience, the qualities she had forged through years of hardship, and he treated her with a kindness she hadn't known in a long time. Slowly, she found herself drawn to his warmth, a stark contrast to the coldness that had once broken her heart. Monica, however, was hesitant. Memories of Nathaniel, the man who had abandoned her when she was most vulnerable, still haunted her. The wounds he left had healed, but scars remained, making her wary of giving her heart away again. She worried about trusting someone with the walls she had carefully rebuilt. But Benjamin's patience wore down her defenses. He never pressured her. Instead, he showed his affection through small gestures, a thoughtful dinner, a supportive shoulder, and an unspoken promise to be there, no matter what. Daniel, watching from the sidelines, recognized the happiness Benjamin brought to his mother. He encouraged her gently, reassuring her that she deserved love and reminding her that Benjamin was different. Slowly, Monica began to let go of her past fears, allowing herself to embrace the happiness that was right in front of her. One evening, as they strolled through Jackson Square under the glow of street lamps, Monica took Benjamin's hand, finally letting her heart open fully. She had found love again, but this time it was a love built on respect and trust, a love that felt like home. Meanwhile, life was unraveling for Nathaniel. His once thriving business empire was in shambles, hit hard by a series of bad investments and risky ventures that had backfired. He watched helplessly as his wealth dwindled, his status slipping away along with it. His relationship with Madeline, his partner of convenience, fell apart as well. When she discovered his financial troubles, she left, accusing him of failing to provide the life she wanted. Nathaniel was left alone, forced to confront the emptiness of the life he had built on status and wealth. Desperate to salvage what remained of his business, Nathaniel sought out new connections and opportunities, hoping for a miracle. But as he looked back on his life, he was haunted by regrets, the family he had abandoned, the love he had lost, and the son he had never known. By a twist of fate, Nathaniel secured a meeting with a promising young entrepreneur, Daniel, whose name had been circulating in business circles for his innovative approach and rising success. Nathaniel, now humbled and somewhat weary, entered the high-end restaurant where the meeting was to take place. He couldn't help but notice Daniel's easy confidence, his keen mind, and his strong sense of purpose, qualities he instantly admired. During their conversation, Daniel mentioned his mother with pride, speaking of her strength and resilience, her unwavering support throughout his life. "My mother is my greatest inspiration," Daniel said, his voice softened by affection. "She's been through so much, and yet she always believed in me." Nathaniel felt a strange pang at those words. Intrigued, he asked Daniel's mother's name, and his heart skipped a beat when he heard it. Monica? For a moment, Nathaniel felt paralyzed. Could it really be the same Monica? He searched Daniel's face, noticing features that felt familiar. A tilt of the chin, a determination in the eyes. The weight of recognition settled over him, leaving him stunned. This young man, sitting across from him, wasn't just a talented businessman. He was his son. Gathering his composure, Nathaniel asked cautiously, "Daniel, would you mind introducing me to your mother?" Confused but sensing no harm, Daniel agreed and led Nathaniel to another part of the restaurant, where Monica was waiting to meet him. As they approached, Monica looked up, her face freezing in shock as she saw Nathaniel. Her hand went to her mouth, her heart pounding as she faced the man who had turned his back on her years ago. Daniel glanced between the two of them, confusion giving way to a dawning realization. "Mom," he asked, his voice edged with tension, "do you know him?" Monica, struggling to find her voice, whispered, "Yes, Daniel, this man is your father." The truth hit Daniel like a tidal wave. He felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. His father, the man who had abandoned his mother when she needed him most, was standing right there, looking back at him with a mixture of regret and shame. "How could you?" Daniel's voice was thick with pain as he glared at Nathaniel. "You left her, left us, without even looking back." And now you want to come back as if nothing happened. Nathaniel's face fell as he tried to explain, words stumbling as he confronted the full weight of his past actions. He reached out, his voice thick with regret. Daniel, Monica, I made a terrible mistake. I let my fear and pride destroy everything I could have had with you. I can't change the past, but please, let me try to make it right. Monica, seeing the depth of her son's pain, placed a hand on Daniel's arm, her touch calming him. Despite everything, she had found a way to forgive Nathaniel in her heart, even if she had long since moved on. Daniel, she said gently, holding on to anger won't undo what's already done. Look at where we are now. We have each other, and that's what matters. Daniel struggled with conflicting emotions, the anger and hurt warring with his mother's compassion. He looked from Nathaniel to Monica, remembering her strength and resilience, her capacity for forgiveness. Taking a deep breath, he looked Nathaniel in the eyes and said, I can't forget what you did, but I'll give you a chance to try to make things right, not for you, but for us. Nathaniel's eyes filled with tears, gratitude mingling with the realization of how much he had lost. He knew it would take time and effort to build any semblance of trust, but the door wasn't entirely closed. That, he realized, was more than he deserved. As the three of them parted ways that night, a tentative bridge had formed. It was fragile, built on years of hurt and regret, but for the first time in Nathaniel's life, he felt hope, a hope that maybe one day he could be a father to the son he had abandoned and repay the love he had so carelessly thrown away. The days following that fateful reunion were a whirlwind of emotions for Nathaniel. Confronting his past had been harder than he'd imagined, yet he knew that facing the truth was just the beginning. He spent many sleepless nights replaying every moment he had shared with Monica, every word he had failed to say, and the years he had missed with his son, Daniel. Nathaniel had once been proud and fearful, letting his reputation mean more to him than his own family, but he had come to understand that his choices had left a trail of broken hearts and empty promises. Now, he was determined to make amends. Nathaniel approached Daniel cautiously, respecting the boundaries his son had set. He attended Daniel's business events when invited, cheering him on quietly from the back, offering advice only when asked. He learned to listen, to show up consistently, and to give Daniel space to decide what kind of relationship he wanted with his father. Slowly, through patience and persistence, he earned Daniel's trust. Their relationship remained tentative, yet each shared coffee, each conversation brought them closer, piecing together the family they might have been. As Nathaniel began to build a place for himself in Daniel's life, he heard news that filled him with bittersweet joy. Monica was marrying Benjamin. Nathaniel was invited, though he sensed it was more out of kindness than anything else. Still, he accepted, understanding that Monica's grace had offered him a chance to witness the life she had built, a life he had missed. The day of the wedding dawned warm and clear, with sunlight spilling through the trees around the charming old chapel. Nathaniel arrived quietly, slipping into the back row. From his seat, he watched Monica walk down the aisle, her arm entwined with Daniel's, her face radiant with joy. She wore a simple gown that captured her elegance, and her smile, wide and free, was one he had never seen back when they were together. Seeing her so happy, standing beside a man who had brought light back into her life, Nathaniel felt both loss and gratitude. He realized that in some way, he had always held on to the idea of what might have been. But that day, he released that final piece of hope, accepting that Monica had long since moved on. Watching her and Benjamin exchange vows, he felt a quiet sense of peace, grateful simply to witness her joy. After the ceremony, Nathaniel watched from afar as Monica and Daniel shared a dance, their laughter filling the air, while Benjamin looked on with warmth and love. He could see the strong, loving family they had become without him, and he was content knowing they had found happiness. But Nathaniel's story didn't end there. Not long after the wedding, Daniel and his wife welcomed a child of their own, a little girl with big brown eyes and a mischievous smile that reminded Nathaniel of Monica's resilience. Becoming a grandfather filled Nathaniel with a sense of purpose he had never known. Every time he held his granddaughter, every time he babysat while Daniel and his wife went out, he felt as though he were being granted a second chance to give the love he had once withheld. He was determined to be there, to offer the guidance and support he had failed to give his own son. Monica, seeing the joy Nathaniel took in his role as a grandfather, felt a gentle sense of closure. She, Benjamin, and Daniel had built a life filled with love and resilience, overcoming scars that might have torn other families apart. The family gatherings were often unconventional. Nathaniel a guest, not a central figure, but always welcome, always part of the tapestry of their lives. Over time, a quiet forgiveness settled over them all, softening the edges of old wounds. Nathaniel had lost Monica, but he hadn't lost his family. In their shared journey of healing, they had each found their place. The bond between them wasn't defined by blood or even traditional relationships, but by the love and resilience they had each chosen. With each new season, they gathered together to celebrate birthdays, holidays, and small victories. The once strained ties grew stronger, bound by acceptance, growth, and the quiet understanding that family was more than just shared history. It was about who chose to show up, who stayed through the hard times, and who continued to love despite everything. As Nathaniel watched his grandchildren grow, he felt the weight of his regrets gradually lifting. He could never undo the past, but he could shape a future filled with the love he had once withheld. And in the company of those he had once abandoned, he finally found a sense of belonging he had spent a lifetime searching for. Monica, Benjamin, and Daniel lived each day with gratitude, knowing they had created a family forged in forgiveness and compassion. And though their story hadn't followed the path they'd imagined, it had led them all to a place of peace, healing, and hope. As Monica, Benjamin, and Daniel embrace a future built on love, forgiveness, and resilience, Nathaniel finds a sense of peace in the role he once neglected, now cherishing the chance to be a grandfather. But while he's welcomed back, he'll forever carry the weight of the choices he made. What are your thoughts on Nathaniel's journey? Do you think he deserved a second chance, or should Monica and Daniel have moved on without him? And if you were in Monica's place, would you have forgiven him after everything? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you do. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.